Now in this final part of the presentation, this is part 8 of our presentation on Hamlet, we're going to consider Hamlet's death and what it means when he dies and then leaves the throne unoccupied. Now he had said earlier in the play that the time was out of joint and that it was a cursed spite that ever he was born to set it right. Now the question is that when we look at the end of this play, is time's joint back in place? Has order been restored? Is power back in the hands in which it properly belongs? Now, as he's dying, Horatio, full of grief, notices that there's still some poisonous liquor left in the cup, and he makes an allusion to the Roman practice of committing suicide, and he's saying that I'm more an antique Roman than a Dane. And Hamlet forcibly says to Horatio to let it go, to drop the cup, and that if Horatio isn't around, that if Horatio isn't available to tell everybody, to this wondering world, what has happened, why are there so many dead bodies here on the stage, why has this happened, if he doesn't let them know what led up to it, then he says things standing thus unknown, it's not going to be good, and that Hamlet will have a wounded name to live after him, that his name will go down in history as probably a horrible murderer, as a conspirator, as a regicide, whatever it would be that history would come up with, that Horatio has to be there to tell what happens. Hamlet also predicts that the election will light on Fortinbras, that people will call for Fortinbras to ascend the throne, which he does as he comes in and sees Hamlet, and he lays claim to the throne in order to restore order, and Hamlet says that he has my dying voice. So the voice of the prince, to count for something, of course, will need Horatio to explain what has gone on, because to the rest of the world they look around, and Hamlet says as he's observing those who are watching, shocked at what they've seen, he says, as they are standing by like wonder wounded hearers, he said he would explain everything, but he just doesn't have time to do it, and so he needs Horatio to do that for him. Horatio, fortunately for Hamlet, agrees to do this, and Fortinbras is there to claim the rights of the throne, so the name of Hamlet can be restored, and order can be restored by Fortinbras. Now it fell to Hamlet to put everything to rights. This is how he understood his mission, and as we saw, he carries it out rather questionable ways. The way he has treated Ophelia is seen as downright nasty, because the way he treats her very roughly and harshly in the Get Thee to a Nunnery scene, while it may have been done to throw, again, Claudius and Polonius off the scent, still the way that the way he handles Ophelia just goes beyond the pale. But after all of this mistake after another, things are back to where they're supposed to be. Now, Kenneth Branagh, in his full text adaptation of the play, fine production, I highly recommend it to anyone who wants to know Hamlet in more depth. He ends the play by carrying Hamlet off the stage like this, and he's later put on a funeral bier, and the statue of old Hamlet, which was what the film began with, is then smashed to pieces as Fortinbras's reign begins. But what is going on with this image? Well, sure, they're picking him up and they're carrying him off, but there's something obviously resonant with other imagery, and of course that's the imagery of Christ on the cross. It seems that Branagh may be sending this message that there's something Christ-like in what Hamlet has done, and that he has given his life to restore order where evil had broken into the order of things. It now falls to Hamlet to give his life to restore that order. Well, if Hamlet is a Christ figure, he's an odd one, because he is in many ways deeply flawed. He may well be cowardly in the way that he has accused himself of being. That's as much for us to decide as for him to decide. As we've seen, he's very harsh to Ophelia. He is really antagonistic toward his mother. He acts more out of revenge than he does out of redemption. So if he is a Christ figure, he's an odd one. I find the imagery that Branagh uses in this this film thought-provoking, but ultimately I have to say he's really not much of a Christ figure. But it's an interesting way of trying to bring back the idea that order has been restored, because that is what the crucifixion of Jesus is supposed to do. It's supposed to reconcile a sinful world to an all-righteous God. And so if there's something reconciling in the action of Hamlet at the end, I suppose one could make that suggestion, and indeed that's what Branagh has done. So, as we close, what is order and power in Hamlet? Well, order is out of whack. Power is in the wrong hands. And Hamlet, in order to bring it back to where it needs to be, has to use some of the mechanisms of power. He has to get around people who are an obstacle to him. He has to manipulate the situation in such a way that he can't be seen or detected in what it is that he's doing, although with the play within a play, he really does give the game away, and then that forces Claudius to send him away and to make an attempt on Hamlet's life, which ultimately fails due to really circumstances. But with the pirate ship and happening to have the father's ring on him and all these kinds of things. Now, by rights, the kingdom should have been Hamlet's. Really, by rights, the kingdom should have belonged to his father, so he died of a ripe old age. But that's not the way it happened. But failing that, it should be Hamlet's to come to, and then tasked by his father with revenge. The way he carries it out shows how delicate the balance of power is. That even though he has a right to that throne, does not mean it will be his in reality. So the difference really between what is ours by rights and what is ours in reality are two different things. And so this just shows that that position is sometimes about chance. It's about action. It's about playing one's cards right, just as much as it is about what law says there should be. So even though Hamlet should have had the throne, it doesn't go to him, and it's really because he failed in an important task, and he failed in some way because some argue he wanted to play God. When he had the perfect opportunity, as we see here, to get his revenge, when he had all of the evidence he required, he stopped and thought about it, and he decided that if he kills his uncle right then and there, it appears that he's praying for forgiveness. And if he's praying for forgiveness, he's going to go to heaven. And if he goes to heaven, then he's sending him to a better fate than what his father has, when his father appears to be paying for his sins in the fires of purgatory. So, where when Hamlet decided, as it were, to play God and not just get revenge, then he set a ball rolling. And it was after this that we start seeing a body count to, uh, to tabulate. And so when Hamlet could have made it just one body, he could have made it look like suicide, he could have explained everything, why the king seems to cause such a scene, why he left in such a frantic terror, all of this stuff he could have explained, and he could have made it look like a suicide, presumably, but he didn't. He wasn't crafty enough. He had to wait once again, and so this may be why this could be the crucial failing of Hamlet, is that he decided he wanted to play God. And that's one way of looking at it. But whatever it is, it was a task in which he failed. He failed to play the game in the way that he ought to restore order and power. And it just goes to show, again, rights are one thing, reality is another, and politics in power very dangerous, and it requires a lot of craft, a lot of art, a lot of thinking ahead, those kinds of things. And if you're interested in reading more about the art of politics, you might want to consider reading Niccolo Machiavelli's The Prince, and what it takes to maintain power, one theory of what it takes to maintain power. Maybe Hamlet just didn't have that Machiavellian bone in his body and needed to do what it took. So anyway, politics is a pretty nasty business, and sometimes some pretty decent people like Hamlet, who again, while flawed, get caught up in it, and they end up on the losing side. And it's but then again, there's a lot more to think about. Is politics any real place for someone as philosophical and meditative as Hamlet? And would he be better off at school studying about philosophy, thinking the deep thoughts he likes to think? Is he just a player in the wrong game, as it were? Anyway, lots to think about as far as that goes. What's the right life for us? Are we well suited to lives of action or lives of contemplation? And maybe, just maybe, Hamlet was better suited for a life of study and contemplation, as much as he was being prepared for the state.